Blog Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye Ojira Medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan Akhamumai Amaruka Etifi Mu Odwirafo Ojiraman Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning African black people. Today is Ojira Day, Purification Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Nation within North America, within Odwiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We have opened up the chat room. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda, Monday nights, we have Akhan Fo Nana Som, Ancient Authentic Akhan Ancestral Religion, where we deal specifically with the Akhan expression of ancestral religion. First and foremost, because we are Akhan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akhan, cosmology, ancestral religion, culture, the nature of the Obosom and Nsamanfo and so forth, not only coming from individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also those individuals on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, who have been infected with Christianity, Islam, the fake pseudo-religions, and white culture in general, and therefore their presentation of traditional Akhan ancestral religion and culture manifests that infection. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akhan ancestral religion, which takes us back to our ancestral origins, which we have shown and proven to be in ancient Khanat, the Khan land, the first land, foremost land, land of the beginning. That is a title of ancient Nubia. Akhan people originated in ancient Khanat. Some of us migrated from ancient Khanat to the western part of the continent after the fall of ancient Kemet and northern Khanat 2,000 years ago. We reestablished the Khanat Empire, that ancient Nubian empire, the Khanat Empire, called the Empire of Ghana in the western part of the continent. About 1,000 years later, because of Muslim invasions, some of our people migrated further south towards the forest belt and savanna regions and reestablished a Khanat civilization in those regions, which exist and comprise today of Cote d'Ivoire, and which is Ivory Coast, and the Republic of Ghana. Hundreds of years after that, some of our people were taken from those regions and forced into North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. This is how some of us ended up in the Western Hemisphere. However, we maintained our ancestral religions upon that forced migration. Thus, the Akhan tradition is called Winti in Suriname in South America, which is from the Akhan term Winti. In Jamaica, the Akhan tradition is called Obia, from the Akhan term Obai. In North America, in the United States, Akhan ancestral religion is called Hoodoo, from the Akhan term Undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession, spirit communication. We also call the tradition Conjure, from the Akhan term Kanche, which means to utter incantations to bring down the spirits and bring the spirits forth of the Obosom and Nananom Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits. So on our Kampo Nana Som, on that broadcast, we purify concepts, understanding, cosmology, ritual practice, and so forth. On Ekwada, Marketplace Day, which is Wednesdays, Avukuda, Kuada, we have Marketplace Day. We showcase Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions. Those who are serving the Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit community in a positive capacity, those who maintain their ancestral religious values in the context of that service to the community, and therefore they approach their service to the community in a holistic fashion. We have showcased a number of businesses, organizations, and institutions. We will have more coming onto the show. We also deal with on that show that philosophical foundation for economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. We have thus published the Okom Economic Development Model, which is an approach to economic development for Afuraitkaitnit people rooted in our ancestral religious values that is therefore a holistic approach to economic development. You can download that Okom Economic Development Model from our website. Part of that process is to starve the beast and feed the pride operation, wherein we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from the white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We target one Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution per week for optimal capital infusion. Therefore, when we take that assessment and reroute $10 away from a white business in the course of a week and direct it to the black business, that's a transfer of $10. When 1,000 people engage that process in the same week and redirect that $10,000 for $10 a piece for 1,000 people, $10,000 to the business, organization, or institution of the week, then that business receives a $10,000 infusion of capital wherein they are able to empowered immediately to hire from within the community permanently on a full-time basis. They are empowered to expand their products and services to us so that they can provide the products and services we need so we don't have to go outside of the community for those products and services. They can expand those product lines, expand those services, open for longer hours and so forth, hire within and so forth. So it's a win-win situation. If we do not engage that process, then by default, we leave that $10,000 in the hands of our enemies, the whites and their offspring. By default, we are financing our own oppression. So we must starve the beast and feed the pride on a consistent basis. We deal with that on the Okom Economic Development Model, in that model, and on the Egua Marketplace show. On Yauda, which is Thursday, also called Yada Abada, we have Amansesew Affairs as a Nation, where we deal with specific issues that confront us as Afuraitkaitnit people, as an Oman, as a nation, but specifically as Odwirafo, the purified nation, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. We recognize the reality of what an Oman or a nation is. An Oman or a nation, in the true sense, is a collection of individuals functioning together in a holistic fashion, but a nation is a living, breathing entity governed by specific Obosom forces in creation. It is an organal structure similar to the organs in your body, which are governed by forces in creation. The cells are children of that organal structure. When the cells work in harmony with one another, in concert with one another, and fulfill their functions, they remain healthy and so forth, but they also support the greater organ of which they are a component part. In the same fashion, we as Afuraitkaitnit people are cells within a greater organal structure. That organal structure is the Oman, the nation which is governed by specific Obosom. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, we listened to the Nsamanfo, the Nanonoma Nsamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, when they direct us to coalesce in a specific region of the Earth Mother's body in the Western Hemisphere, blend ancestral blood circles in this specific region, interface with the plant life, animal life, and mineral life for food and medicine in this specific region of the Earth Mother's body, interface with the unique expression of the Earth Mother divinities in this region of the Earth Mother's body, as well as interfacing with the unique expression of the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Ntorotu, the divinities, the deities, the spirit forces in creation as they manifest in this region of the Earth Mother's body. That confluence of events causes us and allows us to forge a locative identity, a unique expression of Afuraitkaitnit culture and being, rooted in our reality through our experiences and our interfacing with this region of the Earth Mother's body and the manifestation of the Obosom plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, and the bringing back of ancestresses and ancestors through blended blood circles in this region. We have a locative identity, a unique expression of culture, and therefore a unique expression of ancestral religion, and the approach to our problems, our issues that confront us as an Omain, as a nation, specifically Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit in the Western Hemisphere. We have a unique approach to solving our problems, rooted in our ancestral religious values. So Amansesew Affairs of the Nation deals with that, how we approach things from a nationist perspective, an Amaniye perspective. Nationalism, as we say, is the purification of nationalism. It is a proper understanding of nation building and what a nation is, rooted in our ancestral religious values. So that's what we deal with Amansesew. Tonight is Ben Nada, Abin Nada, Tuesday night. Thus we have Ojira. Ojira means purification. So on this broadcast, we deal with the purification of concepts, ritual practices, understanding of cosmology, and so forth with regard to ancestral religion, not just the Akhan expression, but Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, which we call Nanasom in general, no matter where we exist in the world, whether we are on the continent of Afuraitkait, Africa, or when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, we carried our ancestral religious practices in our blood circles. When we left the continent, the manner in which we practiced ancestral religion was fossilized in our bones and blood upon our departure and arrival in this region. The manner in which we practice ancestral religion over 300 years ago, that is the manner in which we practiced then and passed that specific expression of ancestral religion, that pristine expression down intergenerationally and transcarnationally through our descendants here in the Western Hemisphere. That is the tradition that we have preserved in our blood circles. So Hoodoo, which is the Akhan tradition, Juju, which is the Yoruba tradition, Wanga, which is the Ovambo tradition, and Ngangan, which is the Fang tradition, Voodoo, which is the Eveanfon tradition, Gregory, which is the Bambara tradition. These various traditions and others that we have maintained in our blood circles have been preserved intact, inclusive of healers, healeresses, priestesses, priests, and so forth, fully intact. We don't need to look outside of our direct ancestral blood circle for our traditions. We don't have to look outside of our locale for our traditions. People in North America don't have to travel to the continent or to the Caribbean to receive ancestral religion. We have preserved our own traditions for hundreds of years in our blood circles, intergenerationally and transcarnationally through successive reincarnations. So we purify concepts, culture, understanding of ancestral religion and how it impacts every aspect of our lives. Ancestral religion, in essence, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. This is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, no matter what form it takes. Our ancestral religion is the only religion that exists on earth. All of the other pseudo-religions are pseudo-religions, pseudo-spirituality. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion is the only religion that has ever existed and ever will exist, and it can only be practiced by Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African black people wherever we exist in the world. In essence, it is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We state that Ojira purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance to our lives. As we practice our ancestral culture, our way of life, which is the divine acceptance, the law, the love of order, and the divine rejection, the hatred, repulsion of disorder and its purveyors, we seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. When we make legitimate mistakes in that process of living our culture, Then we engage the ritual process to ritually incorporate divine law and ritually restore divine balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order and get back on track to continue to function in creation and execute our divine function in creation while we are aligning every thought, every intention, every action, every moment of every day with divine order. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives from moment to moment, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, lifetime to ancestral life to lifetime. So this is what we deal with on the ODWIRA broadcast. Tonight's broadcast, HAPI and SHETA, the sacred river, turtle, and divination. So we want to examine the relationship between the Obosom of the river, HAPI, and the connection with SHETA, the sacred turtle and so forth, and divination, and the ramifications of their interrelated functions in connection with spiritual renewal, rebirth, and restoration of the Afuraitkainit individual. This is, in a sense, a part to the second part to a broadcast we did last week, which was dealing with the female divinity Merit of the inundation of the river and also ritual song. So, even previous to that, we had the broadcast talking about HAPI and MERIT, the divinities, male and female divinities of the inundation of the river of ancient Kanit and Kemet. The male deities are HAPI-MERIT and HAPI-MERT. HAPI of the south, the southern branch of the river, HAPI-MERT, the northern branch of the river. And then the two female divinities are Merit, Met, and Merit Shema. Merit Shema is Merit of the south, of the southern branch of the river. Merit Met is Merit of the north, of the northern branch of the river. And HAPI and Merit in that regard are husband and wife, the male and female forces, the expansive and attractive forces, spiritual forces that animate the inundation of the river of ancient Kemet. But we also show that they animate the inundation of the river of blood within your body. HAPI governing the arteries, Merit governing the veins, that movement of the circulatory system and so forth, carrying nutrients and so forth, and oxygenated blood and so forth, and then carrying the deoxygenated blood back to the heart, that whole circuit governed by HAPI and Merit, the rivers of blood in your body, akin to the rivers on the earth, mother and so forth. Of course, we also have Hap-Ur, the great Hap, the river of stars in the sky, and that spiritual track of energy, that channel of energy within your body, the river of energy within your body as well, in your spirit body as well. So we talked about HAPI and Merit previously in connection with our upcoming HAPI-MERIT Hiber-Nation retreat, which is next month in South Carolina on Edisto Island, the Gullah Islands. And when you see this image on the promotional image for the show of the tortoise, the Achachedie or the Sheta, the tortoise, that's one of the tortoises that is found on Edisto Island. We have that retreat coming up. We call it the Hiber-Nation retreat because we're going into that hibernation period when we regroup, restore ourselves, purify ourselves, and so forth, so that when we come forward in the spring, we are fully renewed and ready to bring forward what we were germinating and rooting and developing during that hibernation period. And we're talking about Obatine and Obedima, Afuraitkaitnit womanhood, Afuraitkaitnit manhood, which we will have workshops on those two books. Myself, I will be conducting the workshop with the males, with the men on Obedima, Afuraitkaitnit manhood. Dr. Iya Ajwa will be conducting the workshop with the sisters, and we will also have the group sessions and so forth for Ptah, Sasatim, and others. So that's taking place. That retreat, Hiber-Nation retreat, governed by the deities HAPI and MERIT, the February 16th through the 19th, that particular weekend, but that's also the beginning in the proper astronomical zodiac of the sign of the water bearer, which in reality is HAPI. It's not Aquarius. The white offspring stole that imagery from us, but it's HAPI, the water bearer, with his two vessels pouring the water so that the river can inundate or swell. It's also MERIT, pouring the water into the river so it can swell and so forth and become pregnant and so forth. So the beginning of that season, HAPI and MERIT, that swelling of the river and so forth, we're also taking time around that time to have our HAPI-MERIT retreat, a Hiber-Nation retreat, training, cultural, and ritual retreat. We're going to talk about that more later in the show. But we did the first broadcast dealing with those two divinities. We did another broadcast showcasing the fact that HAPI and MERIT is connected to the terms happy and married, that union of complementary opposites, bringing balance into creation, bringing back ancestresses and ancestors and so forth, dealing with abundance and so forth. But then we did a broadcast on MERIT herself, specifically as not only the divinity of the inundation, but also of the ritual song. And now we want to deal with HAPI and the divinity SHETA, dealing with renewal, the sacred river and so forth, but also dealing with what we're going to get into, these ritual aspects and divination. So first we want to look, we talked about HAPI, the swelling of the river and so forth, the inundation, but then there's a divinity named SHETA, and there are male and female divinities that are connected to, whose sacred animal totem is the tortoise. SHETA or Shete in ancient Kemet is pronounced Chede or Achechede in Akhan, which means turtle or tortoise, which is a sacred animal totem among specific clans in the Akhan tradition. The same is true of ancient Kemet. The same is true across the board wherever Afuraitkaini people are found. There's a relationship between these different kinds. There are certain kinds of turtles. You have these water turtles and so forth, and water tortoises that are connected to the river and so forth in ancient Kemet and Kanat, which we want to deal with. SHETA is one of those tortoises. Now, if you read some information about the divinity, some general information about the divinity, and then we'll get into some detail. The people of ancient Kemet did not distinguish between the Nile soft-shelled turtle and the Egyptian tortoise and classified them both as a type of fish. They were hunted for their meat and shells. The shells were used as containers, sound boxes for musical instruments, and served as raw material for jewelry, but that raw material for jewelry as containers and so forth is also dealing with shrine implements. But they were used for those as ritual containers, sound boxes for musical instruments. We talked about MERIT, the female divinity of the inundation and ritual song last week. Now we're talking about SHETA operating through the river, this sacred divinity, this spiritual force whose animal totem is that Nile turtle and so forth, the shell being used for sound boxes for musical instruments. We're going to get into that. Now, what we want to pull up, and we're going to put a link in the chat room real quick, one of our publications. And that publication is the UBEN-HYENG, the Ancestral Summons. We put the link to that. Matter of fact, that's the first book that we published ourselves. We hit our 20th year anniversary of the release of the UBEN-HYENG this past December 21st on the solstice. And we've impacted hundreds of thousands of people with this particular book. Put that information out there first. That link is in the chat room right now. For those who are not in the chat room, UBEN-HYENG on our publications page, the NHOMA page on our website. But first, before we get to that, we want to deal with this notion of renewal. As we talked about Hiber-Nation renewal, when we were talking about HAPI and MERIT, we talked about the quote-unquote Nile crocodile and Sobek living within the primordial waters and so forth. We talked about this and talked about HAPI with regard to Hiber-Nation and estivation and so forth. The same occurs with turtles. They deal with hibernation as well as estivation. So, during hot weather, a land-dwelling turtle may bask in the morning, feed for an hour or so, and then retreat to a cool, moist place during midday. It may lie in the shady shallows of a lake or a stream, rest inside the burrow of some other animal, or dig down into decaying leaves or the rotting wood of a log or stump. Some terrestrial turtles enter the water and bury themselves in the mud. Biologists term this heat avoidance behavior estivation. Aquatic turtles also estivate, which is similar to hibernation. Hibernation is when animals go and quote-unquote go to sleep when the temperature drops and becomes cold. It becomes very, very hot, just like crocodiles. They will bury themselves in the mud or in the sand and so forth to escape the heat, and they will remain there for months at a time in a hibernating state, but an estivating state. So hibernation is for the cold, estivation is for the heat. So biologists term this heat avoidance behavior estivation. Aquatic turtles, this includes the quote-unquote Nile turtles and so forth, tortoises, also estivate by digging into the mud in their home ponds or marshes. If their home ponds or marshes start drying up, turtles may estivate for a few hours, a few days, or even several weeks. While estivating, they may become torpid. Cooler weather or a period of rain may draw them out into the habitat again. If for some reason a desert tortoise cannot retreat inside its cool burrow, it will try to find another shady spot. If shade is unavailable, it will spread its own saliva on its head, neck, and front legs. As the saliva evaporates, the tortoise is cool. The ornate box turtle of the plains states uses both saliva and urine to promote this evaporative cooling. Sometimes the land-dwelling turtle or tortoise will tip over onto its back and so forth. But then we get into hibernating. Many North American turtles hibernate to escape winter's chill. Some swim to the bottoms of rivers, streams, lakes, or ponds, where they dig down into the sand or mud or lie resting in the layer of water directly above the bottom that generally remains unfrozen. Their brain activity dwindles and they move very little. Depending on how far north they live and how long the winter lasts, turtles may stay dormant for as long as 6 or even 7 months. All turtles that scientists have studied can obtain oxygen when underwater, some more effectively than others. When hibernating, common map turtles cluster in oxygen-rich areas of streams and rivers where they take in oxygen through their skin. Soft-shelled turtles, like the Nile turtle, have gill-like structures inside the throat, which give off carbon dioxide and absorb oxygen. While lying on a pond or river bottom, red-bellied turtles open and close their jaws up to 6 times per minute, cycling water through their throat cavities and gleaning oxygen from it. Some snapping turtles and painted turtles winter in stagnant waters where they make do with little or no oxygen. Turtles that hibernate while dug into a lake or stream bottom or buried deeply in soil on land also can withstand anoxic or near anoxic conditions. So when you look at the inundation of the river and you see the quote-unquote Nile turtles shown in the iconography of ancient Kemet swimming in the sacred waters of HAPI, and they go underwater, and they hibernate for a long period of time and don't emerge from the water for a long period of time. Weeks later, months later, they emerge from the water and so forth. That is akin to a death and a resurrection. A death, a renewal, and a resurrection. Of course, they retract their head and legs and so forth into their shells and so forth. That's akin to that mummification process when the body is hardened, crystallized, and so forth. Eventually will be reborn from that crystallized, hardened shell. The spirit will resurrect and so forth and come forward as it was with Asar and so forth, and with us through eventually reincarnation and so forth. So when you see the turtle disappear under the water, gone for a long period, and then re-emerges, reborn, is renewed and so forth. That hibernation or estivation process deals with death, processing, renewal, and resurrection. So these spiritual forces have that capacity. The gateway to the spirit realm is often talked about crossing the waters and so forth. Water is a gateway to the ancestral realm. Water is a gateway to the spirit realm through ritual. Spirits, for example, the Mwati and other Obosom and Nanonoma and Samafo, take the spirit of the individual underwater and then teach medicine and teach ritual healing practices and so forth underwater and so forth. Going under or being taken under the water is an initiatory process. This is prior to the whites and their offspring picking that up and creating this notion of baptism. Long before that happens, we're talking about going under. The Nile tortoise going under. The crocodile, the Odenchim Sobek, the divinity going underwater and staying underwater for long periods of time. Sobek is the crocodile divinity who went and retrieved the body of Alsar from the water, placed Alsar on his back, and then came up out of the water. So the mummified body of Alsar, that preserved body of Alsar, is brought up out of the water by Sobek. You see people getting wrapped up in white and so forth and dunked in the water in churches and so forth and then resurrected from the water. That is stolen from the mummified body of Alsar, being brought out of the water by the great divinity Sobek, the crocodile divinity. Sobek also goes into the water to retrieve the two hands of Heru that had been cut off and thrown in the water, retrieve those two hands and return them to Heru so he can function and so forth. So this whole notion of going under to retrieve spirituality, retrieve power, retrieve that consciousness and bring it back to the surface, bring it back to the awareness and so forth, that has to do with these different divinities. That is inclusive of Sheta, the divinity whose animal totem is the Achechedie, or the Sheta, the tortoise. So this is what that notion of renewal, resurrection, and so forth has to do with. Now, and the same is true, of course, with the water itself retreating through its channels, then eventually overrunning its banks and flooding the entire country, bringing that fertile black silt to deposit on the banks of the river, and then the water once again retreating back into its channels. And in that sense, is going into an estivation state. So, we want to get into this notion of a ritual practice. We talked about, like we did with Merit, the female divinity of the inundation of the river, dealing with ritual song. We want to get into the male divinity, Sheta, in connection with HAPI. We talked about the tortoise shells being used not only as containers for jewelry, but containers for ritual implements, but also for sound boxes. What are we talking about with sound boxes? Stringed instruments in ancient Kemet. And this has to do with civilization as well. When you Google images of the stringed instruments of ancient Kemet, the harps and so forth, that has to do with a higher level of development, spirituality, civilization. When the instruments are stringed together, we're being led by the Obosom, such as Heru, who governs music and so forth and puts together harmonious sounds in a harmonious fashion, fuses together in an ordered fashion, a harmonious fashion, the kind of sounds that will stimulate the physical body and the spirit body and so forth and the people in general towards harmonious action, and helps to dispel disordered projections, emanations, thoughts, intentions, and actions and so forth. Now you're dealing with a higher level of civilized society. Stringed instruments. When you look on different websites talking about the stringed instruments of ancient Kemet, many of them talk about this. Harps developed from the hunting bow and used since the old empire were triangular or arc-shaped. You will see those arc-shaped and triangular-shaped harps. They usually had 8 to 12 strings made of an animal gut. Both men and women played them sitting, standing, or kneeling. At times, their sound box was tapped or beaten, described in inscriptions as Seker Benat, striking the harp. They were generally made of wood and probably did not project very far. Harps were often decorated and could be expensive works of art. And one of the texts from ancient Kemet, from Tahuti Mesu III, states, "My Majesty made a splendid harp wrought with silver, gold, lapis lazuli, malachite, and every splendid costly stone. So they didn't spare expense with regard to fashioning these musical instruments. But the key here is the sound box with regard to that. In the New Empire, so-called New Kingdom, the lute consisted of a small, oblong, wooden sounding box, flat on both sides, with 6 or 8 holes and a long neck, often decorated with ribbons from which 2 or 4 strings were strung. It was played with the plectrum or bare fingers. Similarly to modern string instruments, different notes were played by pressing the strings against the neck of the instrument at various spots, seemingly marked by frets. And that's the origin, of course, of the guitar. But that sound box, sometimes made of wood, but sometimes made of the shell of the tortoise, this sacred animal totem. So the tortoise is directly related to the sound box ritual song, the same divinity operating through the river of HAPI as well as MERIT. And we talked about last week the MERIT being the ritual songstress, enchantress, and so forth. So what is this notion of ritual song? What does it have to do with realigning ourselves with divine order, ritual renewal, ritual purification, and so forth? That Hiber-Nation, once again, is ritual renewal, going into the dormant state, going under, quote-unquote, the water in an initiatory state so we can grasp what we need to grasp, infuse within our spirit bodies what we need to infuse, and when we return to the surface of the water and come through the surface, emerge on the surface, and so forth, resurrect, we're ready to engage and execute our function. What does ritual song have to do with that? We go to the UBEN-HYENG, our publication UBEN-HYENG. Go to page 9. The specific section is entitled Song and Dance as a Ritual Possession Meditation. So what we state in the UBEN-HYENG is sound is power manifest. Rhythm is power conditioned. Different vibrations, different rhythms. Different rhythms, different powers. God's power manifests through sound rhythm. Goddess's energy manifests through God. We are captivated by this sound. We are animated by this rhythm. We exist through form as this sound rhythm. You will operate consciously as Goddess God when you, talking about as a child of Amunet and Amen, Goddess God, when you have cultivated the fullness of consciousness and power which lay dormant within you, that which was placed in you by spirit, talking about Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. Fulfillment occurs then as your spirit's form is consciously united with the great spirit's form. When your spirit, the Ba or Ba'et, is consciously united with the great spirit, Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress. Your power now in conscious harmony with the great spirit's power. Meditation, alteration of conscious focus, opens the way, for it is the means by which one becomes open to receive, to possess the sounds, rhythms, powers of creation. Song and dance are expressive forms of chant, trance, provocation, talking about ritual provocation. Song is generation of power, a revelation of sound. The voice vibrations unveil power. Why should this power not be wisely directed towards turning the keys to unlock every phase of creative power? Song is truly ritual. Spirits, meaning Ra and Ra'et, ordered movement vibrations ritualize the song of cosmos. Its harmony is captured and reverberates by through space perpetually. Should you not seek to hear and echo this song, these sounds, this power, should you not sing as spirit sings, directing your voice vibrations in forms, song, displaying the great spirit's harmony in order to facilitate possession, empowerment. Song as ritual is possession meditation. So that's the section on song. So let's examine exactly what the Nsamanfo are talking about. And as you see, when you reading the UBEN-HYENG, which is different from the other texts, it's the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our blood circles, speaking directly to the reader. And we simply took the information down, wrote the information down as they were dictating that information, confirmed it, and so forth, and published it. So that's why it's in a question and answer type format. So it says, song is generation of power or revelation of sound. So that generation of power, the sound vibrations, it says the voice vibrations unveil power. Anything that vibrates generates sound, but it unveils power. The higher or faster moving vibrations generate those higher pitched sounds, more shrill sound, and so forth. The slower moving vibrations generating a lower pitched sound, but it also unveils power. Sound vibrations, yes, they are invisible, but this is one of those pieces where you can understand that the invisible force directly affects us. When people say if you can't see something that's not real, that's pure stupidity. You can't see magnetism, but you can understand its effects. You can't see sound. If someone is speaking, you don't see the sound. If you close your eyes, you don't see it. But of course, it affects you. Not only do you hear it, causes your eardrums to oscillate and so forth, but sound reveals power. The vibrations, you can feel the vibrations of loud music pounding in your chest. Someone can sing at such a pitch or, volume that the sound vibrations can break a glass. That means sound carries power. Those vibrations carry power. The different sounds manifest different vibratory waves and rates, so they can be channeled in specific ways. The voice vibrations unveil power. Why should this power not be wisely directed towards turning the keys to unlock every phase of creative power? Song is truly ritual. We're talking about the phases of creative power. When Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, expand and contract the divine living energy moving throughout the black substance of space and throughout the planets, sun, moon, and stars, enlivening created entities as they move throughout space and move throughout created entities and so forth. They cause that fertility, that vibrancy, that vitality within all created entities. When they plant their spiritual force in a creative entity or unit of creative power and so forth, that is the manifestation of a divinity, of a deity, an organ or organal structure out of the great divine body of Amenet Amen, empowered by Ra and Ra'et. So the Ra and Ra'et, as the creator and creatress, all of the different deities are born of Ra and Ra'et, created by Ra and Ra'et. Just like you have a physical body and the different organs are regulating order within your physical body, you have a divine living energy that's animating all things. Even before the organs fully formed, you had a divine living energy operating within you as an embryo and so forth. And as you continue to grow, that divine living energy was always circulating within your being, even as the organs began to form. So that divine living energy is what birthed the shape of those organs, so they can manifest in the shape that they are and hold that shape and hold those forms and carry out their functions and so forth. Ra and Ra'et give birth to the various deities. These are the quote-unquote phases of creative power that we're talking about. Why should this power dealing with ritual song not be wisely directed towards turning the keys to unlock every phase of creative power? Song is truly ritual. That means different sound vibrations have different vibratory waves and rates, different frequencies. They are in alignment with the expression of energy of the different phases of creative power, meaning the different deities. The watery deities have a certain frequency that emanates from them. Earth divinities have a certain frequency that emanates from them. Atmospheric divinities, wind divinities, fire divinities, mountain divinities, river divinities, and so forth have different frequencies that emanate from them. When you attune to the frequencies that are emanating from these unique forms in creation, spirit forms in creation, those unique configurations of sound vibrations emanating from them manifest their true name. But when you sing and you align with the energy emanating from these deities and you project that same frequency of sound vibrations to that divinity. It merges with that divinity, and now you provoke the energy of that divinity. This is what ritual song is doing. That's why we say song is truly ritual. Spirits, or Ra and Ra'at, and Yonkumpon and Yonkunton, Praetor and Praetresses, spirits, ordered movement, vibrations, ritualize the song of cosmos. That means when Ra and Ra'at are undulating through the black substance of space, spiraling through the black substance of space and the various created entities within the black substance, as they move, expand, and contract, their movements are generating sound vibrations unique to the forms that they operate through. As they move through creation, constantly circulating through creation and generating these sound vibrations that are harmonious vibrations, rooted in divine order, a manifestation of divine order, they are ritualizing the song of cosmos. That's why we say song is truly ritual. We can participate in that ritualization of the song of cosmos by releasing ordered sound vibrations. Quote-unquote songs or ordered sound vibrations, harmoniously ordered sound vibrations that are designed to provoke the energy of the Obosom, who carries that frequency of energy, so we can be fed from the dispensation of energy coming from that divinity, no different than a child pulling on the breast of the mother, provoking the energy of the mother to receive nourishment or milk and so forth. Our sound vibrations, our provocations that are released from us provoke the energy of the deity, that spiritual force, and what we receive in return is a dispensation of their energy that floods us, replenishes us, and so forth, renews our consciousness, and sometimes it leads to spirit possession as well, or sometimes simply spirit communication. So we can be informed by that force in creation and take part in that energy replenishment. That's ritualizing the song of cosmos and participating in that. So spirits, ordered movement vibrations, or Ra and Ra'at's ordered movement vibrations, ritualize the song of cosmos. Its harmony is captured and reverberates by through space perpetually. The black substance of space captures the energy of the ritual song that's generated by Ra and Ra'at moving through the black substance. The various planets, suns, moons, stars, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afuraitkaini, human life, capture the movement of Ra and Ra'at. Your body captures the movement of Ra and Ra'at. Within your physical body, you have a portion of Ra and Ra'at's energy. Your Ba, if you're a male, Ba'et, if you're a female, the divine living energy. You capture and connect with the energy of Ra and Ra'at from the outside, and you capture it inside of you, no different than you take in a little pocket of air from the great source of air, which is the atmosphere. You pull in some of that into your lungs. So you have a direct channel from your lungs through your trachea out into the great source of air, the great source of energy permeating all of creation, Ra and Ra'at. We pull in a portion of that within our spirit bodies and physical bodies. That is our Ba, our divine living energy that animates our physical bodies and spirit bodies. And it is connected energetically to the great source of divine living energy, which is Ra and Ra'at. They are the great Ba and the great Ra'at, the great spirit. So the harmony of Ra and Ra'at's movements are captured and reverberates by and through space perpetually, which includes us. Should you not seek to hear and echo this song, these sounds, this power? Meaning, should you not align with the forces in nature as Ra and Ra'at animate them and enliven them? You align to the forces in nature, hear the specific and unique configuration of sound vibrations that are emanating from them, and that ordered fusion of sound vibrations, you capture, you hear that. You should hear it first, absorb it into your ear canals and so forth, and stimulating your vestibular system and creating balance within you. You hear it, you process it, and then you echo that song, those sounds, that power. That's why it says, should you not seek to hear and echo this song, these sounds, this power? Because the song is the ritualization of the movement of Ra and Ra'at in the cosmos. Should you not seek to hear it, echo this song, meaning repeating these sound vibrations, this power? Should you not sing as spirit sings or as Ra and Ra'at sing, directing your voice, meaning your vibrations, in forms or songs, displaying spirit's harmony, or Ra and Ra'et's harmony, which is the harmony of Het Heru, in order to facilitate possession empowerment. Song is ritual, is possession meditation. So once you engage that provocatory process ritually, release those ritual songs or ritual sound vibrations, chants. Those sound vibrations provoke the spirit bodies of the deities as well as the ancestral spirits, and the response is a dispensation of energy to you, which you are flooded by, you receive, you retain, and you process and utilize to restore and replenish energy within yourself, overcome temporary deficits, impregnation of energy you just received, and so forth. Spirit possession sometimes takes place. This is empowerment, ritual empowerment. So that's that portion. The next portion talks about ritual dance, but we just wanted to talk about the portion with regard to ritual song. Then that takes us back to the divinity Sheta, whose actual tortoise shell is utilized ritually as a sound box for ritual instruments, ritual instrumentation. So when those harps are being played or the lutes is being played and so forth, Sheta is participating in the resounding of energy. And when we're inspired properly, and the kind of songs that we're playing or the music that we're playing is guided by the deity of harmony, which is Het Heru, who governs music, the only kind of songs that we play are songs that carry sound vibrations that have harmonious fusion. Then they stimulate our spirit body, they stimulate our physical body, our organs, and so forth. When you hear discordant sounds, it creates discordance within your eardrums, even within your physical body. It becomes annoying. Some people's hair stands on the back of their neck and so forth, hearing discordant vibrations. But when you hear harmonious vibrations, then that brings harmony within your physical body, also harmony within your spirit body, because it places you on a frequency that's in harmony with Het Heru, the divinity of manifest. Harmony is the manifestation of divine order. When you see harmony, you see divine order manifest, ordered fusion. So when we hear harmonious sounds, it places us in a harmonious state, meaning an ordered state, because harmony is just an expression of order, the expression of order, manifestation of order. So it places us in a divinely ordered state. Sheta is participating in that process with regard to the sound box as his shell. That has to do with renewal. It has to do with, quote-unquote, processing and resurrection and renewal. When we go into this Hiber-Nation state, and we go under, quote-unquote, the water, go into an initiatory state, go into a meditative state, go into a ritual state, go into a hibernating state or an estivating state. Then we go deep down, undercover, under the water, in the darkness, so to speak. We germinate, we root, we reach down for those nutrients and so forth that we need to strengthen ourselves, edify ourselves, repurpose ourselves and so forth, refocus ourselves with divine order, and then we emerge from the water, resurrect and so forth, come forward, spirit of an Obosom or one of the NHOMA or fully edified and empowered, so we can move forward and execute our function and overcome the obstacles that we may have encountered. This is what's happening with Sheta. This is what's happening with this hibernation piece. The other piece we will talk about is the notion of divination quickly. If you go to our ADEBISA page on our website, we'll put the link in the chat room. Because when they talk about, when it's stated that the shell is used as a container for jewelry and things like that, which can happen, it's the same thing with the kudu or kuduo. In our Akhan tradition, they'll say, well, it's just a container for shea butter and other cosmetics and things like that. Yes, that vessel can be used for that, but the vessel is also used not only for water, for libation, for ritual purification, but it's also used for ADEBISA, which is divination. Same thing is true with the tortoise shell, the shell of Achecherie, the tortoise for divination. You'll find that in the Akhan tradition. You'll find that in different traditions wherever Afuraitkaitnit people exist, including in the Hoodoo tradition in North America and so forth. So we want to touch on this notion of divination, which we've done a couple of broadcasts on divination in detail. We just wanted to touch on the specific definition so people who are new to that information can get that, as well as how it's directly related to what we're talking about with regard to renewal. So we say on the ADEBISA page, divination or spiritual consultation is an integral component of all expressions of Nanasom, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, wherever Afuraitkaitnit, African black people are found in the world. This includes Afuraitkaitnit in North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean today, or descendants of those who were taken from Afuraitkaitnit during the Musuo Kwesi, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, yet survived, waged war against the white slavers, and liberated ourselves. It is through our divination practices, our capacity to attune to the forces of nature, learn directly from them, and the NHOMA, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, to learn what Nyame, the Supreme Being, required of us and what was the best means by which to overcome our enemies. Through divinatory practices, we found the best means by which to wage war against the whites and their offspring, how to fashion metal armaments to wage war against the whites and their offspring, how to escape into this unknown territory and protect ourselves, how to use chemical and biological warfare to eradicate the whites and their offspring, going into the woods, going into the forest, in this new area that we were unfamiliar with plant life and mineral life and animal life that we were unfamiliar with because we had been forced over here from Afuraitkaitnit. We communicate with the forces in nature that govern this region, finding out what plants were good and minerals were good for our own healing of different ailments. Because some of this plant life is brand new to us. We didn't know what was poisonous, what was not, what was good for certain elements and so forth. We had to learn from the deities, the forces in nature, who was who, but then also learning which plants can be used in combination with certain minerals and so forth, or independently to poison our enemies for chemical and biological warfare, which we used effectively against the whites and their offspring. So divination was key to our liberation, inclusive of finding out when the whites and our offspring were going to attack one of our free settlements, from what direction the attack was coming, what time the attack was coming, how large the group was. We will find that out ahead of time through divination so we could be prepared and rout them, which is exactly what took place. Now, we talk about the definition of the term ADEBISA, which means to inquire of the divinities and so forth. Through ADEBISA or divination, one learns from the Obosom and NHOMA, the deities and spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, the nature of past, present, and potential future circumstances and events in relation to our thoughts, intentions, and actions as measured against the standard of Nyame wa Nyame Nsheshe, divine order. That's that working definition of ADEBISA, divination. It is through, once again, ADEBISA, divination. Through ADEBISA, one learns from the deities and ancestral spirits the nature of past, present, and potential future circumstances and events in relation to our thoughts, intentions, and actions as measured against the standard of Nyame wa Nyame Nsheshe, or divine order. ADEBISA, or divination, operationalizes Nanasom, or ancestral religion. It is not only about seeking answers to overcome obstacles or exigencies or urgent requirements. We use ADEBISA, or divination, also to learn. Just as one can sit down and open up a book or log on to the internet to learn facts about various subjects to study, so do we use ADEBISA to learn about, research, and study any subject imaginable. The Obosom and NHOMA, the deities and ancestral spirits who are spiritually cultivated, in concert with your own Kra, Krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness, the deity in your head region, will inform, direct, and position you to come into contact with individuals and information concerning the subject you queried about through ritual for confirmation and further study. Oracular divination systems of Afuraitkaitnit are the original books that we opened and continue to open in order to avail ourselves of knowledge of all things in the physical world and the spirit realm. And of course, that takes us back to HAPI and SHETA, the male and female forces of divine wisdom who govern divination, Ma'al and Ma'at, the male and female forces of divine law that codify the divine wisdom brought forward from Tahuti and Seshat. And when we're talking about oracular divination systems, these are the original books. So this idea that there were 42 books of Tahuti or Hermes or Thoth and so forth, that's pure stupidity. That's the whites and their offspring, later the Greeks invading and so forth, manufacturing little stories about 42 books and a hidden book that has the secrets of the universe and all this other nonsense, and it was hidden in a certain place, and once people could find the book, they would have the secrets to the universe. That's pure stupidity. There's no basis in reality. So when Negroes are running around talking about the Hermetic text and all this other foolishness, they're repeating Eurocentric, foolish, perverted fragments of our culture. Not our culture, but taking less than 1/10 of 1% of our culture, a fragment, perverting that and promoting that perverted fragment of 1/10 of 1% of our culture as the culture. The other 99.9% they know nothing about. And then the less than 1/10 of 1% they have, that's corrupted. And that's what you have when you have Hermeticism, the Hermetic text and so forth, and the Kabbalion and all of this other foolishness. Emerald tablets, all that nonsense. And some of our people were duped into believing that garbage was actually our culture, which is not. We're going to get into that in a future broadcast. But the 42 quote-unquote books of Tahuti, no, we're talking about the 42 assessors of Ma'at, 42 deities. We talked about the 42 administrative divisions of ancient Kemet, inclusive of the capital, which makes 43. We talked about that in connection with the 43 pairs of nerves that govern the peripheral nervous system that regulate order within the body, just like the 42 administrative divisions of Kemet plus the capital, which makes 43, regulate order within the country, the society, the body politic, and so forth. We dealt with that as they are governed by the centipede deity Sepa, who governs this peripheral nervous system in the physical body, the spirit body, as well as the body politic of the country, the nation. We dealt with that last night in the broadcast that is posted on our YouTube channel as well. But the oracular divination systems are the original books where we attune to past, present, and potential future circumstances and events in relation to our thoughts, intentions, and actions as measured against the standard of Nyame Wa Nyame Nsheshe divine order. Now, that's directly related to renewal. That's directly related to restoration, resurrection. When we talk about going into hibernation, riding on the shell or the back, or riding on the back of Achechedie or Sheta, the tortoise divinity who goes under the water, into the waters of HAPI and MERIT and so forth, goes into hibernation, estivation, for renewal, for edification, for recharging and so forth. And when we come forward and re-emerge and break through the surface of the water and come back into the light of day and so forth, we're fully prepared to overcome any obstacle and deal with any innovation and manifest innovation we need to manifest to execute our function in creation. When we're going through that process after we have gone into the water and we're in the hibernation phase, during that phase where the renewal process is going on, the renewal process itself is a series of queries. It's a series of quote-unquote questions or a series of consultations or a manifestation of ADEBISA, divination, on a consistent basis. We're learning what we need to learn as we're in the hibernation state. And the way you learn what you need to learn is to provoke the energy of the Obosom and NHOMA for the deities and spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors through query, through oracle, through divination through various forms of divination that includes spirit possession, spirit communication, whatever it is, as you're in that hibernation state. And then when you emerge from the water, like the Sheta, the turtle emerges from the water after a long period, you have received answers from the various queries that you initiated while you were going through that processing stage or that renewal stage, and then you come out of the shell and you rise up out of the water, and then you execute your function harmoniously from moment to moment to moment, day to day to day, and so forth. So that's what we're talking about. That's the connection. In fact, and this is why this is as part two to the piece on Merit, talking about the inundation of the river, but also ritual song and so forth. We're dealing with HAPI and MERIT, because once again, we have our hibernation retreat. We go from being the purified nation ODWIRA mind to the Hiber-Nation for a short period of a number of days, going to that Hiber-Nation period, going to the Gullah, one of the Gullah Islands, a sacred ancestral site where our people waged war against the whites in our spring and preserved their culture. That's why we're having this retreat in that area. It's also not far from the Combahee River, where Nana Abena Araminta, Harriet Tubman, led a regiment, an armed regiment of the Union Army, the first woman to do so, into that area and helped to free over 700 enslaved Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. That was in addition to her, of course, going back and forth to the south, retrieving hundreds of our people and freeing them from enslavement through the whole Underground Railroad process and all of that. But she also led an armed regiment of the United States Army into the region because she knew the region. She had mapped out the region on her own, so they had to depend on her in order to get to that area, freeing over 700 of our people. That is in the same region from where the retreat is taking place. So we're going into that hibernation stage to study, to incorporate, to inquire, to consult, and so forth. It's a training, cultural, and ritual retreat, restoring this proper consciousness of Oberima, Afurakani manhood, Obatain, Afuraitkaitnit womanhood, Amaniye, nationism, the purification of nationalism, because strong men and strong women are the foundation for strong marriages, which are the foundation for strong families, which is the foundation for a strong ODWIRA mind, a purified nation. So this is what we're dealing with. We also, just to make an announcement on that, we mentioned on the previous broadcast that we had a couple of spaces still open because of cancellations. Over the weekend, a couple of those spaces were taken. So now we have one space left for the retreat. If you would like to attend the retreat, you can take that one space. It's first come, first served. So you can go to the HAPI-MERIT page on our website and let us know. Of course, you see all the information there, the registration process and so forth. Everything is on the page. So we have one more space left. And again, you'll see the details with regard to the dates and so forth coming up. Okay, so that is the information we wanted to cover for tonight on HAPI and SHETA. Once again, as we said before, this is one of those broadcasts where the information that we are discussing tonight will be part of a future publication. Sometimes we do broadcasts on the publications we already have out. We have 29 books that will get published to date. We have more books coming out very soon, 29 books to date. Sometimes we do the broadcast and where we will go into detail and dissect each one of the books. We've done that, or specific sections of the book that have to do with certain issues. We go into detail about that on certain broadcasts. We publish over 100 articles, so sometimes we deal with those as well. But then sometimes we have broadcasts where we put forward information we have not yet published, and then eventually we will publish the information that we talked about in the broadcast. So this information about HAPI and MERIT and SHETA and so forth will become part of a future publication. Everything we talked about tonight, as well as the broadcast we did last night on the deity Sepa, the centipede divinity that governs the peripheral nervous system and so forth, and the Sepa of ancient Kemet, the different quote-unquote gnomes of ancient Kemet, all of that will be in a future broadcast in a future publication as well. Sometimes we want to put the information out before we have a chance to publish it because we don't want to just sit on the information. Okay, so we have one call on the phone line. Michelle, on the phone line, number 8162. You had a question or a comment?
What's up, Brother Kwesi?
What's up?
I had a question last night, but I was having a hard time staying connected.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask about...
In fact, a couple of people said they had a problem. A couple of people sent the notification, said they had a problem on the phone line with Blog Talk. So if you had that, send us the email because we'll check and see what happened, because it's about 3 people so far who said they had a problem yesterday trying to connect.
I'm not sure if it was Blog Talk. It was a lot of crazy things going on my end. Even the internet kept going down on my end over here.
Oh, okay.
So, but I wanted to ask about the whole idea coming from the white supremacy, dealing with career management and goals and time management. And that whole thing, like how we're supposed to, kind of plan our lives and come up with goals and objectives, dealing with jobs and degrees and all of that stuff, and how that relates to ancestral religion, because it seems like all of that stuff is in direct conflict with our Encyclopedia. And a lot of times, when we're trying to meet those standards on that side, we end up dealing with a lot of stress and things don't go as planned and different things like that. And a lot of times that stuff is more along the lines of survival as far as, getting a job just to maintain different things, but it has nothing to do with Encyclopedia. And so how should we be managing our time and things of that nature from an African perspective?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. First and foremost, we have to recognize the reality, just like our ancestresses and ancestors recognized the reality when they were forced over here, that while they were living on the plantation, they were behind enemy lines. So they were eating, they were fortifying themselves, but they were also plotting and planning to free themselves from the plantations. But as long as they were on the plantation, they knew they were behind enemy lines. They were sustaining themselves, keeping their health, up and so forth, because they were plotting to free themselves. And eventually, those who were involved in ancestral religion did free themselves, establish independent settlements, and then helped to come back and free others. And when they established independent settlements, then they did everything they needed to do based on their own culture, including agriculture and the procuring of medicine and defense and teaching their children and protecting the Oman, the little sovereign settlements and nations and so forth. And it's the same thing now. We're not in an independent nation. We have not established that yet. Some of our people are working towards that, where some people have migrated away from America and repatriated to the continent. Some people are working on that side. You have other people over here working on different things with regard to establishing an independent space in the Western Hemisphere. But in the meantime, while we're behind enemy lines, we know that we're behind enemy lines. So we have to fortify ourselves, strengthen ourselves, protect ourselves, and do what we need to do to survive and move forward towards that goal. Ancestral religion does play a part in everything that we're doing. So, for example, we always talk about the Kra or the soul, the divine consciousness. You have a specific function to execute in creation. You're a child of a specific divinity. Because of that, you're going to be naturally inclined towards specific behaviors, which includes specific sets of behaviors, which includes the manifestation of sets of behaviors, which includes a quote-unquote occupation. So people who are children of certain earth divinities, like Amen, for example, which is Orisha Oko in the Yoruba tradition, and Azaka and Vodun, They'll be naturally inclined towards, on that notion of fertility. They'll be naturally inclined towards agriculture because that's a deity dealing with agriculture. They have a natural inclination to work with the spirits of the earth and so forth, to bring forth produce and so forth, because they're a child of that divinity. So when they're operating in harmony with divine order, they will move into the field of agriculture. Now, they may first encounter the field of agriculture in a university and the way the whites and their offspring do things, or if they go to a black university, it may be more, closer to normal. But they will move into that particular field because they're naturally drawn to that field, and that's part of their natural function. They may learn certain techniques, the way it's done here and so forth, but when they get fully invested and they're conscious, they will take what they have learned and begin to incorporate and do things the way they know they should be done. If someone is a child of a healing divinity like Nebehet, Akua, or Ajua, which is Aset and so forth, they'll be naturally inclined towards learning medicine and learning healing and so forth. They may first, so that's their natural inclination towards medicine, whether they're, dealing with internal medicine or if they're, some kind of specialist, they'll be naturally inclined towards that, or they're obstetrician, OB-GYN or whatever, they'll be naturally drawn. They may go through a process and go through schooling and so forth that, the way things are done here, so they can be certified to operate in that fashion. But then some people will say, I'm going to go through a naturopathic school, or I'm going to go through a traditional midwifery school and so forth. They're going to find a way to fulfill their divine function and at the same time service our people, at the same time, maintain themselves, survive and so forth. So no matter what it is, some people who are naturally children of fiery divinities like Benna, Abena, which is Ogun and Iyami in the Yoruba tradition, Heru Bedeti and Sekhmet and so forth, they'll be naturally inclined towards defense. They govern the immune and lymphatic systems in the body. So they're naturally inclined towards that set of activities instinctively ever since they're children. So they're the type who will be naturally drawn towards some kind of policing function, security function, military function, and so forth. But in that process, they may, and they become conscious, they may say, well, I'm not joining the military because I'm not going to be fighting wars for these crackers. They may say, I'm not joining police force unless it's a black town or a black area and they're trying to protect and be the stopgap measure to protect the people from other criminal white police and so forth. So they may decide to establish their own security firm. They may decide to establish their own gun club or manufacturing of guns, their own business. They may decide to establish a martial arts school based on our ancestral traditions to teach our people martial arts and so forth. They're going to be drawn by the divine function. They're going to be naturally moved towards a specific set of behaviors or occupation that is in harmony with their divine function. If the manner in which it's carried out in larger white society is not in harmony with order, they may get certified or degreed in that certain area, but then they're going to take what their quote-unquote certification and establish something based on our culture and move forward. So no matter what occupation it is or set of behaviors it is, it'll be motivated by the deity that governs you. You'll move in that direction naturally ever since you're a child. You may confront misrepresented, administrative structures for that kind of occupation because we're behind enemy lines. People may still get certified in those areas or degreed in those areas, but then they will move forward and establish things based on the way we should be doing them. And that's the way we operate within ancestral tradition behind enemy lines.
That makes sense. I mean, but for me, right now, the things that I'm doing to maintain myself have absolutely nothing to do with Maya and Krabia. And I have to keep, bringing myself back to center because it's like I'm getting caught up in the quote-unquote rat race of what I'm doing to maintain myself. And that's kind of at times I get to the point where it's taking precedence over what I should be doing as far as my actual spiritual work. and it gets a little stressful. You know, I feel like I'm in conflict.
Okay, so then, and that's a conflict that a number of people have. They may be working at a specific job or something, or doing something entrepreneurial because they simply need to make money and generate money to pay rent and pay for everything else. But it may be something that's totally against, or just, you know, just totally outside of what their natural inclination is. So what happens is it's a temporary process. The way you make it temporary is you're focused on doing that to survive, which we've had to do that just like when we were forced on plantations. While we were planning to escape, we did have to pick cotton, and we did have to do what we needed to do so we could still eat, stay strong, keep our immune systems up and so forth while we were planning to escape, while we were setting things aside, setting weapons aside, going out into the forest late at night to get certain medicines that would become poisons and so forth. But during the day, we were picking cotton and so forth. The whites and offspring did not know what we were planning. And it's a similar thing here. We have to do exactly what our people did, the ones who were successful and followed their model. They did that during the day, but then once they were outside of that occupational piece, when they had that couple of hours, quote unquote, of freedom of movement, or slipping out of the sight of the enemy, then they plotted and planned and so forth to do what we needed to do. So you find out you may be doing something to generate funds right now, but the way to make that temporary is to, and this deals with ritual practice, of course, consistently to find out specifically you have an idea of what your function is, and the more you operate, the more it becomes crystallized for you. But certain occupations or certain activities that are in harmony with your function, then you look at those activities and find out the way that business can be connected to that. Like somebody, like I said, with regards to someone who's naturally drawn to a military kind of function, they may see the military and say, I'm not joining the military. They may see the police force and say, I'm not joining that. But they may use that fiery energy that they used to just fight people all the time and express it that way. They were like, well, no, I'll establish a martial arts school because people need that. They'll pay for that. But at the same time, we're teaching and we're building the community as well and fulfilling a role in the community. So they'll start that, or they'll start a security firm. So they start working on putting some funds aside or figuring out a way to establish that kind of structure on a small scale while they're doing their regular 9 to 5 until they can break away from that and do the real thing, or bit by bit start that process. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurial pieces. You're doing what you need to do to survive in the moment, but then you're also finding out what your function is, what occupational set of activities can fulfill and support that function, and then bit by bit start working on that. And as you work on that outside of the regular 9 to 5 stuff, the more you work on it, the more you'll draw those resources to you, and the more it builds into the point where you can eventually do what you need to be doing full time and get rid of the other occupation. So we have to follow that model.
Ashe, makes sense. Merase.
Okay. We appreciate the call. Okay, so we are going to end the broadcast here. We have the last announcement we would say is just like we're talking about that ADEBISA, Divination, how we utilize that here in the Western Hemisphere. There were different animals we never came in contact with. Plant life we never came in contact with. We didn't know if it was poisonous or not, especially if we escaped from the plantation. We're in the forest and so forth. We have to find out where certain animals are. We've never seen bears before, never seen other certain kinds of animals, never saw snow before, seasons changing and so forth. We have to figure out ways to survive, and we utilize divination for that. Which one of these plants are going to kill us if we eat it right now? Which one will sustain us, give us the right nourishment and so forth for us as well as our children? Same thing with animals and mineral life and so forth. So we were heavily dependent, which is good, on our divinatory practices, not only to survive, defend ourselves, but perpetuate ourselves and so forth. So this is why we're doing our our documentary film, AMARUKAFO, ADEBISA, ADWUMADI, African American Ancestral Divination Project. As we said before, we are at the final push over the past week and a half. We went from 48% to 51% with regard to the crowdfunding effort. We started that effort 1 year ago, 1 year and 1 week ago, and we're at 51%. We've had about 109 people who have contributed. If you have been impacted by the work that we have done over the past even 20 years, that includes the UBEN-HYENG we released 20 years ago, the Kukutuntum we've released 16 years ago, and then all of the various books, 29 books over that period that we've released. If you've been impacted by that, you've never had a chance to support the work that we're doing, never had a chance to purchase or contribute to the crowdfunding effort, then this is the time to do so. And yet I'll say we appreciate those who have already contributed. And for those of you who will contribute, you can go to the crowdfunding site now, the AMARUKAFO ADEBISA crowdfunding site on Fundraiser. It's on our website, on our Facebook page, and so forth. You can watch the 9-minute trailer for the documentary. We want to get it done as soon as possible. We have 350 followers on Blog Talk Radio alone. That's our channel on blogtalkradio.com/Odwirafo. If each member made a small contribution, we will be over, we will reach our goal within 24 hours. So we've had about 109 people over the past 12 months who contributed. Some have contributed more than once. We have many more people who haven't had a chance to contribute yet, but this is the final push, and we want to get to that point because once we reach the goal, we can finish the filming within 30 days, and we want to have it out before the beginning of the spring equinox, which is in March. So please support that effort. Go to the fundraiser.com, FUNDRAZR.com/AMARUKAFO_ADEBISA. Any amount is welcome. If you would like to receive books in return for your contribution, just let us know in the comments section and so forth, and we can get the work done. We are at the final stage. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast, and Yebesha Bio. We will meet again. That's it.